have confidence in yourself. I think that especially female leaders, both on the investment side and the founding side, need reminders and to themselves and with other people in their community, reminding them that whatever you have conviction in is important and is worth chasing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Worldwide. Thank you so much for being here and for tuning in. Well, it's a new week. I've got another guest who has a really interesting story and great actionable advice for you. So let's get to the topic. The topic is the world of investing. Whether you are the investor or you are the investment, my special guest knows both sides and has the experience, and she's going to break it down for you. Joining me on the show is Naomi Shah, and Naomi is the founder and CEO of a modern media company called Meet Cute. But before she founded her company, she was a member of the New York-based investment team at Union Square Ventures, and Naomi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Union Square Ventures. And before that, she was a macro equities trader at Goldman Sachs. So clearly has a lot of experience in the world of investing. I could go on and on. It's time Naomi shares her journey and advice with you. Welcome. Welcome to Women Worldwide.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So it's Union Square Ventures.
Yes, exactly. Our office was near Union Square in New York, so hence the name.
Very cool. So, I mean, there's so many questions to ask you about being on both sides, being an investor, and now you are the investment. But take us to that pivotal moment when you just knew it was time to make that shift and to launch your company, Meet Cute.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I, like you said, was on the team at Union Square Ventures. And just for a little background, USV is a tech VC that's invested in a bunch of products that we use every day, like Twitter and SoundCloud, Etsy, all of these consumer platforms. So what I loved about that job is getting to work with founders and their founding teams every day, roll up my sleeves, work on their financial model with them, work on their marketing strategy with them, work on potentially M&A processes with them. And it was so fun to context switch from company to company and get to work with all these incredibly smart and passionate people. And while I was at USV, we were incubating this idea internally about what would happen if you took a product-based company and smashed it with a media company, which are two very different fields, like two very different ways of scaling a business, scaling a team. And I started getting really interested in that. And so I just spent time while I was on the investment team digging into that. What does it mean? What would strategy for this company look like? What would a business model look like? And I spent more and more time on it. People noticed and were like, what would it look like for Naomi to operate this company? And a couple of the partners at USV sat me down and talked to me about, switching from investing to operating. And I was
awesome.
It was an incredible opportunity. And I think that I'm really lucky to have had an opportunity really naturally to, start working on operating with the support of an investment team and the team that I'd worked with for the past 2 years.
Sure.
So that pivotal moment for me was a weekend when I was, debating between continuing down this road of investing and getting to work with all these founders versus going thing and spinning this idea out into its own startup. So obviously here we are. I chose the latter path and I am so happy I did. I've gained so much experience and knowledge that I didn't have on the other side of the table.
Well, that is really interesting. And as I hear you share about that, the pivotal moment and even the lead up, do you think that your investment team put the idea in your head, or you actually knew that you were going to launch something? Because that's really interesting. They recognized it and sat you down, but yet you were taking all the steps to make it happen.
Yes. I think that, well, from a young age, I've always kind of chased this idea of like, what does it mean to build something new in the world? And I think that comes from my parents, but my mom and my dad started a company. And so growing up, I kind of saw that behavior and I never knew what that was going to look like for me. But I've always thought in that way, like, if this thing doesn't exist in the world yet, what does it take to make it in the world? And so I think that as I was doing research and coming up with this idea internally, I thought about it like a new company, like a startup already. So even before it was incorporated and we hired a team around it, it had already kind of taken form in my head as to what this looks like when it comes off the ground. So I do credit that I was working with for seeing that potential in me and helping me take that leap of faith. But I also credit just kind of the way I grew up and think about things is very much, if you have this new idea, what are the actual steps you need to take to launch it? And that's kind of the way I was thinking about it, even when we were incubating it inside of this venture firm.
Terrific. Now, Naomi, there are challenges that you probably saw as an investor with founders and whatever was going on with the investment. And now being on the other side, there are challenges. There must be, as you've secured millions for your firm, you're growing. So are those challenges similar to what you saw as an investor, or a completely different set of challenges?
I love this question. I think it's so interesting to talk about. I almost would categorize the challenges that we face in both the investor role and the investment role as kind of two separate lanes. You have like these really tactical that are very different in both of those roles. Things like, how do I fundraise as a founder doesn't really need to cross your mind as an investor because you're the one that's providing capital to founders. But I actually think there's a layer of like soft challenges. I'm going to call them soft. They're not soft because they're very real, but that affect people no matter what industry they're in. Things like, am I the right to be building this company at any given time? Am I the right person to be investing in this company at any given time? How do I build my brand? I want Meet Cute to have a brand that stands out and is the new entertainment brand. Similarly, as an investor on the venture side, you're constantly thinking about building your brand and the brand for your firm because people need to know who you are to come seek your investment. So I think that there are some challenges that both investor and investment a lot. And then there are some that are so different, and nothing could have prepared me for the challenges of running an early stage company. I think
Right.
managing a team and growing it from scratch is an insanely hard thing to do, but so satisfying when you find the right people to build it. And I think that's a pretty unique thing to early stage founding. Um, I'll go through three of them because there are like countless ones. The,
Sure.
sec- the second one is defining the vision of the company, because you have to not only go to that 30,000 foot view and see everything from like a bird's eye, but you also have to be able to go deep on something. So it's this like kind of sinusoidal function of being able to go high level and really deep
Macro,
within,
micro.
exactly within an hour or a day. And I think as an investor, you generally sit more at that 30,000 foot level because you're looking at industries kind of holistically and you're not necessarily building something. So you don't have to be the expert in that one thing. Um, and then the last one that I'll mention is actually making sure that, so the first one was hiring, second one was setting the vision and the goals for the company, and the third one is fundraising. And that is something that like every founder and CEO has to make sure that they are doing in a timely manner, that they're doing it well, that they can tell the story associated with their company. And I think that's like one of the core job descriptions of a founder and CEO is making sure that other people see the value of the company and that you're creating value for those people. So I think that's a really unique lens, and doing that for the first time on the other side of the table was, one, nerve-wracking, even though I'd sat in that room, hundreds of
Even though
times.
you knew what to expect as an investor, it was still nerve wracking.
Yeah, I think so because it's like you're putting your neck on the line for the first time in that like you have I don't think I've ever felt this much ownership over something
Oh,
in
right.
a role before. And like, like this is a small example, but we make stories. We make scripted stories. We do it at scale at Meet Cute. Our whole company is around making feel good stories that make people feel good. And when we put our first story out in the world, this is back in 2020, early in the year, everyone on the team, all three or four of us, were up at night because we couldn't go to sleep because we were putting our first story out in the world. And it was like, this is how people are going to know us and judge us and comment on us.
It's a big deal.
It's such a big deal. And I like those moments that keep you up at night and bond you as a team. And, everyone's on Slack at 5 a.m. Like there's just no other replacement for that. There's no way to like experience that, I think, unless you are in the trenches doing it. So it's a small example, but I think it goes to show the kind of like grit it takes on an early stage team to like steer this ship through a global pandemic, through, a lot of social and political injustice, make sure that people are excited about the work they're doing when they're working from home, all of that.
Well, I have so many more questions, but first I want to mention use the word grit. I'm not sure, but have you read the book Grit by Angela
I
Duckworth? Yes.
I've read excerpts of it.
It's
I
really
haven't.
good. I
It's
read the
so
whole
good.
thing.
Yes, actually, at the VC firm that I work at, there were tons of her books lying around because I think that before I joined the firm, she was a speaker at one of the events, and so I've like
Um,
seen her work and her quotes and everything all over the place, and I love her work.
I do too. Now, you had said something that I think was an important, it was all important advice, but there's another piece of advice that I want to bring out from you. When you were talking about the macro and the micro, does that mean that when you're in front of investors, you really have to know what it is that you're sharing with them? Would you say that that's one of the skills of a founder?
Absolutely, I think that communication and sales, like people don't talk about this enough, but it's half the battle with not only working with investors, but working with a team. Like you need to make sure that everyone's bought into what you're working on and working with partners. Like people don't want to work with you if you don't know what you're selling and what your vision and mission statement are. So I think that the macro and micro terminology is super apt here, where as a founder and CEO, you have to be able to go macro, talk about trends in the industry, talk about where broader entertainment industry and media landscape, and you have to know that like the back of your hand. So I spend some time every day reading the news about what's happening in Hollywood, what's happening in the media and entertainment industry, what mergers and acquisitions are going on, what partnerships are going on. Not because I feel like that necessarily affects my day to day at Meet Cute, but I feel like all of that information comes into play when I'm talking to our investors, when
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
doing a
That's
team
their
meeting.
agenda, basically. It's knowing what they are interested in, what's on their minds. You're tapping into that. That's really smart.
Exactly. And then to juxtapose that, you need to know the micro, like, did this payment get processed? And what are we doing for this marketing effort start week? What is our launch plan? And you have to know the tactical details around it so that you can make sure that you're plugged in, that the team knows that everything's moving smoothly, like clockwork. And so it's this really interesting exercise of like focus and going deep versus coming up for air and seeing that bigger picture. And I think that's the thing that I'm learning the most and also enjoying the most about being a founder.
That's really interesting. Any other, just off the top of your mind, skills that have either transferred over as an investor into being invested in that you want to share with women worldwide?
Yeah, I think one that's coming to mind is as an investor, your job is to ask questions and not necessarily be the expert, but be the best at taking all of that information and analyzing it and saying, is this investment worth time and money? And I think that it's a really similar process when you're actually the investment, where you are trying to constantly figure out how to go about something. I actually think that like as the CEO and founder, you don't need to be the expert in the room. Just like as the investor, you're not the expert in the room. I think you need to surround yourself with experts and have them guide direction, North Star, and then kind of communicate around that with conviction. So I think that behavior is really interesting. And my advice there would be to one, take hiring super seriously and treat it like part of your full-time job, not like a side gig that's part of
Right.
the job. And two, be really, really conscious of who you're bringing onto your cap table because at an early stage, like they're the ones that are going to help you open doors, unlock conversations, talk through strategy, figure out what's next for the company. So the people that you surround yourself with, both on your team and on your cap table, I think, especially in the first like 3 to 4 years of a company, matters so much. And so I would say be really slow and conscious about those decisions rather than moving quickly through them just to get it over with.
Right. I think so many founders look to fill positions quickly, ramp up quickly. And I like what you're saying about a slow, steady, intentional approach to your hiring. Your people are everything.
Exactly. And actually, I worked, like you mentioned, I was an equities macro trader at Goldman before
I
I
was going to
started
ask
it.
you what that is, actually.
Yes. So basically, micro equities is basically trading individual stocks. So, like you have Apple, Google, Amazon, and you're trading those individual stocks. The macro side is you trade bundles of stocks. So, say for instance, you want to invest in the tech sector, they'll bundle all those stocks in an ETF, and we trade that package of stocks. But what I was going to say is that Goldman, you know, even though it wasn't the perfect career path for me in the long run, I wasn't there for too long before I switched into like kind of the tech investing world. What I learned is that their number one brand value was people are our biggest assets.
Mm.
And I think that like carrying that mentality into working with founders at USV and working with the team and investors and partners at Meet Cute has been something that I value a lot, where it's like you're not a company without the around you and the people you work with. And so I think thinking about it as part of the core product rather than siloed from the core product, I think is really important. Like people are part of your product in a way.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I'm going to pivot a little bit and ask you to share one of your biggest aha moments, a real learning moment that has stuck with you. And it could also be an uh-oh moment that stuck with you. Either way.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the event that actually happened at the beginning of the pandemic. So Meet Cute launched right like a month before the pandemic hit,
Oh
which was
my.
Valentine's Day 2020. Um, and yeah, to your point, it's like so scary to navigate through that. We had no idea what was coming. We kept seeing it. The government was extending loans to startups, and we were like, I don't think we need that, but we also want to make sure that we take care of all of our employees, that we take care of the freelancers that we work with, that we're able to continue producing content. So the biggest aha moment for me was that like there are just so many things out of your control. The pandemic was just one example of that.
Exactly.
And I think that it put, if I were to like, 2020 hindsight, if I were to put on kind of a critical thinking lens look at that year, I actually think that it created constraints for our business that led us to become more creative. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying the pandemic was a good thing by any means. It was terrible and really hard, but we learned so much in the process of coming up with contingency plans to continue operating really efficiently during the pandemic that we continue to use today. And it made our company a lot more efficient and better at working together and communicating. And so I think that like the aha moment was that like you take any hardship and you take anything that puts constraints on your company, and a constraint can be we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we don't have people in one place in one room working together, and you turn those into how can those make us better at what we do. And those conversations were some of the toughest ones to have with our early team. We talked about, we literally recorded these meet cutes in person in a studio in New York. And we talked about what does it mean to record all of these in a distributed way in people's homes without compromising on the quality of audio. And that was something that, like, when we figured it out, we were like, this is a new way of creating content in a distributed way that no one has
Yes.
done before. And we just invented that. And so that moment has kind of made it so that I think as a person and as a company, we're a little bit more resilient
Mhm.
towards things that are thrown our way. And obviously, no one can predict the future. So I just think that gaining that skill has been so valuable and so helpful because small things will happen and it's like, okay, no worries.
No
How do we figure
worries.
this out? How do we work through it? Yeah,
Yes, a lot of critical thinking, and boy, is that resilience. Unstoppable. I love it. Well, I'm going to ask you, I can't even believe it, but we're nearing the end of this wonderful conversation. So I want to ask you just some parting advice. You've shared a lot with the Women Worldwide audience, but maybe you could just give them your take on how they can have better investments or invest in themselves.
definitely. I think investing in yourself is so important. It's like you can't pour tea from an empty pot, I think is like the saying. But um, if I were to give one piece of parting advice to women worldwide, it would be to have confidence in yourself. I think that especially female leaders, both on the investment side and the founding side, um, need reminders and to themselves and with other people in their community, reminding them that whatever you have conviction in is important and is worth chasing. And that has been something that I have, you know, in various ways continued to try and hone. So like whether it means writing out what I'm thinking and being firm about, whether it means taking time and blocking off time on my calendar to work on my ideas and, you know, deep thinking so that I can lead with more conviction and talk with more conviction. I think having that space and time to build confidence in whatever you're working on is so important. And so I would say like carving out time for that is something that's really helped me as a leader and a founder. And I think had I done that on the investment side, it would have helped in a bunch of ways as well. But I find writing to be a really helpful way to hone in on that. So that's my way. I think some people do it through speaking. So like working with a coach or like, you know, even a therapist in some way, in some contexts, working with your team to build out ideas. I think that just it takes time and confidence and also a little bit of fake it till you make it. Like while you're building your company, even every day doesn't seem like the perfect day, knowing that like whatever North Star you're building towards is worth building, I think is a really great thing to keep remembering. So that would be my advice is to like lead with lead with conviction.
Well, big takeaways here: courage, conviction, and confidence. So Naomi, that was awesome. Where can people find out more about you and Meet Cute?
Yes. So Meet Cute is on every social platform. I think our biggest followings are in our audio feed. So come find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We have a subscription on Apple Podcasts as well. And we love making really fun content on socials too. So Instagram, TikTok, wherever you are. And I'm on all social platforms also. So Naomi Shah on Twitter and Shasta on Instagram. DM me. I'm super happy to get to know all of you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your journey on both sides, investor and investment. And we just love having you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. So fun to chat.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into Women Worldwide. Keep the conversations going and the feedback coming. You know where to find me. I am on Twitter at Deep Breckenridge. And please connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Okay, friends, until our next episode, stay energized, focused, and feeling empowered. Thank you.